Your life has been purposely given by God, and you are brought here on purpose by Him. Good morning, everybody. A blessed morning to you. I pray that you had a blessed week, and I pray God's blessing over you in the coming week. We thank you for all your prayer, your support, your love, and we offer the same in return. Remember, you are always, as we know you, we embrace you, and I need to let you know that you are in my prayer, especially if you let me know that certain things are not going in well for you, and you may be ill or you may be having issues. I do remember you in prayer, and I pray that God will see you through whatever difficult time you may face. Beloved, I want to continue this morning's teaching, and I want to remind you in almost exactly 1 year ago, in May of 2021, I introduced you to the end time events as listed by the prophet Daniel. God revealed to Daniel what events will take place before he comes to receive his church, which we know as the rapture. And certain events will happen over a period of 3.5 years. And whenever a seal in heaven is broken, and remember, Jesus, the Lamb, will be the one qualified to break the seals. And every time those seals are broken, an event will take place on earth. And that event, those events are separated by about a year. So every year, in a period of 7 years, certain events are going to take place. And the first 3.5 or 4 events that will take place will do so just before the rapture. And those events will happen in a certain order, but they will interchange with each other. In other words, while one is happening, the other will happen simultaneously. So that I gave you that in May of last year, but we took a closer look at this in January of this year, and I gave you details of what events Daniel told us must take place. And we'll read a few of those just so that we are on the same track. The first seal in the book of Revelations chapter 6. Now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying with a voice like thunder, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a white horse. He who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him. And he went out conquering and to conquer. Now, this prophecy was given to John, which echoes what Daniel saw, but gives us specific order to the breaking of the seals. And according to John, he says that this event will be precipitated by a white horse. And we learnt about the 4 horsemen a few months back. I preached to you and taught you what the 4 horsemen mean. I gave you details. And I also mentioned to you that when the 4 horsemen arrive, one at a time, each one will signify a certain of those events, the same events that Daniel spoke about. But the first and primary event will be facilitated by the white horse. It will be the foundation of the attack of the Antichrist against humanity. And that attack of the Antichrist will be the breaking of the first seal. And that will be a medical issue. In other words, through medicine, pharmakia, the devil will launch an attack against humanity, which will begin the tribulation period. The second seal that I spoke to you about, when Jesus breaks that second seal, the war on earth will start. And that war, the beginning of which we saw happen in March, April, where the Russian and the Ukraine forces came against each other. And I say that in inverted commas because there is a fast going on, and everyone that is in the know knows that in order to bring the next seal, curse upon the earth, this one has to take place. So in order to create hunger, starvation, and famine in the world, there has to be a war first. And the war in Russia and Ukraine is able to give impetus to the program that these elites want to create, and that is a shortage of food. We won't read that second seal for now because we dealt in detail with it a few weeks back. The third seal, the scarcity on earth. This is the famine in Revelations. When you opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." I got no time to give you the exact details, but as you can see, there's going to be a shortage of food products. That's barley and wheat, and we're seeing that happening right now. That is the third seal. After that event, we'll get into details about that in a moment, and I'll expand on the stuff that we've done last week. But prepare yourself, we're going to get some very interesting information coming out towards the latter end of this sermon. The fourth seal is the widespread death on earth. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over the fourth of the earth, to kill with the sword, with hunger, with death, and by the beasts of the earth. You see, it started with the medical crisis, the sickness across the globe. It followed by the beginning of a war. That war would create a shortage of food, and a shortage of food will lead to death and hunger. I don't know whether you can see, according to this fourth seal that is broken, the 1/4 of the earth's population will be killed, will die as a result of hunger, or simply put to death by the sword. Sword means purposely exterminated. So as you can see the picture, whatever was prophesied in the book of Revelation, which was foretold by Daniel in the first place, is all coming to pass, one after the other, as we have been told by the ancient prophets. Now I want you to look at a few headlines concerning the third seal, famine. A news article on the 16th of May, headlines, "Sugar prices go up with immediate effect." And here is the reason. Sugar producer Tongaat Hewlett, Zimbabwe, has increased sugar prices by more than 64% in the wake of government's ban on lending by banks. On Friday, Tongaat Hewlett suspended with immediate effect advance payments to its farmers for the next season. The company uses bank loans to pay growers, and now it cannot do so while borrowing is suspended. Last week, President Emerson Mnangagwa ordered banks to stop extending loans to both private companies and government departments. Here is a Western ally, the Emerson Mnangagwa. This man has been positioned through the military to occupy a post that will carry out the agenda of the West. And when I say West, I'm talking about the elite Ashkenazi Jewish cabal that want to eliminate the population, well, at least by a quarter of the world's population. That is an exact proportion that we heard Bill Gates tell us that this is what needs to happen. Now, it must be told to you that when Robert Mugabe took over in 1980, he was praised by the West. And he was knighted by the Queen. In fact, he executed some of the dissidents, and everyone knew about it. But the Western media, the mainstream media, turned a blind eye to his barbaric executions because they thought that he was on their side. But he got clever over the years, and he started to criticize the West. That is when they put sanctions on Zimbabwe, and they blocked him and his family and all the extended people that he's associated with from traveling abroad. They are the ones responsible for removing him. Not that he is a very good person, but the fact is that because he wasn't aligned to their cause, he was ostracized. I need to make sure that you understand. He went on to ridicule Tony Blair. He went on to speak about Condoleezza Rice, who was the foreign affairs lady at the United States, and he called her an African slave girl who is echoing her master's voice. You see, because he knew the agenda, and so he had to be removed. Another article tells us, do you use cooking gas in preparing your meals? Expect the following in the coming weeks. Brace yourself for even higher cooking gas prices. The Kenya Revenue Authority has imposed new taxes on imported liquefied petroleum gas. And now, this rise in the gas prices in Kenya prevents people from cooking. It also increases the price of all the materials they need to cook. This is all in aid of promoting starvation and famine. Something even Jesus prophesied will happen in the last days. But according to Daniel, this is the order of events: medical attack, war, famine. In the United Kingdom, they're not immune to this. An article tells us the UK farmers can't afford to plant crops for next season due to the rocketing fuel and fertilizer costs. The minister was told. Reuters highlighted the cucumber crisis. Surging energy prices leaves British glasshouse empty. In Japan, or in Australia rather, Japanese encephalitis virus, Australian outbreak on pig farms. They want to euthanize all the pigs because they say that this virus is killing or is infecting the pigs, which could infect humans. So this is the excuse to euthanize thousands of pigs. In fact, the biggest farm supply of pigs are being euthanized as we speak. In America, they're killing off deers. Another article tells us food supply shut down, crops not planted, deer, fish, pigs euthanized. More to come. Beware, the third seal is breaking as we speak. But the fact that this can't happen until Jesus breaks the seal tells me that these events are not controlled by the devil. In fact, he can't lift a finger till Jesus breaks the seals. So all these things are happening based on the actions and the permission of Jesus Christ. In other words, in short, the devil, as bad as you might want to think he is actually carrying out the orders and wishes of Jesus himself. So if Jesus doesn't break those seals, he cannot attack. Luke 21:11, and great earthquakes shall be in diverse places, and famines and pestilences, and fearful sights and great signs shall there be from heaven. Why stop there? Let's look at what Justin Trudeau is doing, the Klaus Schwab lackey, the tube boy. A YouTube video tells us. Watch this.
The Canadian government has devised a devilish new plan to solve homelessness, inflation, skyrocketing crime, and food shortages. Euthanasia for the poor. Justin Trudeau's government say they are now offering to pay to euthanize people who are too poor to continue living with dignity.
Well, let's move on now to our favorite man, I don't know what to call him, Yuval Harari, the lead advisor to the World Economic Forum. I want you to take a listen what he has to say now.
Again, I think that the biggest question maybe in economics and politics of the coming decades will be what to do with all these useless people. The problem is more boredom and what to do with them, and how will they find some sense of meaning in life when they are basically meaningless, worthless.
Well, he is calling people useless, meaningless. He's referring to them as worthless. There are certain categories of people that he's calling, especially Africans, which he specifically mentions in many of his talks, that useless, worthless, good for nothing people, without plan, without purpose. I must say, he was talking about invalid people. He's talking about people that have also, amongst the useless people, are people that have no purpose, invalids. He is referring to people with mental disabilities. And, let me tell you, if you are a person who has God consciousness, that means there is a love and a respect that you have for God. It means that your life has been purposely given by God and you are brought here on purpose by Him. Your value is intrinsic, which means that it depends on the value God placed on your soul, on your spirit, on you. It doesn't depend on what others think about you. It does not depend on what you failed at in this world. It doesn't depend on how much of money you have amassed over your lifetime. Even if you have failed marriages, if you have been abused, if you have a debilitating sickness, chronic sicknesses, it doesn't matter who or what you are facing. But if you have a love for God, if there is an acknowledgement, we may not be perfect all the time. We may even do things that God might consider unclean. But the fact that you are aware, you acknowledge God's presence, it means that He has given you that idea of acknowledgement. You cannot have an acknowledgement of God unless He puts that part in you, which means that God has planned you. And He says concerning people, He speaks about this in a parable in Matthew 25. And He says, and the king will answer and say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. He's talking about poor people who have nothing. He's talking about them that is part of Him. So let me tell you, what these people are doing is making people feel that they have no value. Justin Trudeau wants to offer people, pay them to kill themselves And so they're all following an agenda. Can you not see the picture? The man that is advising the World Economic Forum and the players that are involved are carrying out those wishes.
I think once you're superfluous, you don't have power. Again, we're used to the age of the masses of the 19th and 20th century, where you saw all these successful, massive uprisings, revolutions, revolts. So we are used to thinking about the masses as powerful. But this is basically a 19th century, a 20th century phenomenon. I don't think that the masses, even if they somehow organize themselves, stand much of a chance. We are not in Russia of 1917 or in 19th century Europe. What we are talking about now is like a second industrial revolution, but the product this time will not be textiles or machines or vehicles or even weapons. The product this time will be humans themselves. We are basically learning to produce bodies and minds. Bodies and minds are going to be, I think, the two main products of the next wave of all these changes.
Two things that should catch your attention. The first is that the masses, when they used to have strikes, the more people strike, the more powerful their voice becomes. He says that is going to be a thing of the past. Because you see, they have the ability to control the minds of people. And so that sort of thing will not be a problem anymore. Something even more interesting he echoes. They will produce, make, manufacture bodies and minds. Have you noticed there's no soul involved there? That means they're going to manufacture humans from the test tubes, which they will divinely control, robots, AI. That's what they are busy doing. Something I warned you about. I even spoke to you about the little green men and how they have been experimenting. The devil wants to incorporate humanity in an inorganic form, in a robotic form. Take a listen to this next part.
But think about a world, say in 50 years, 100 years, where the poor people continue to die, but the rich people, in addition to all the other things they get, they also get exemption from death.
I've been telling you this, the reason why they're building pods so that they can live on Mars. They're building space stations to accommodate the travel. They're taking many steps because what they know is that this earth is not going to last much longer. Jesus Christ has predicted it, and they believe it more than even the Christian folk. So they're preparing a place to live outside of this planet. And one of the reasons they want to do that is because they feel they create a technology in which they can extract the consciousness of themselves and plant it in a human body that they will manufacture, they will own, and they will have control of because they own a product. It's a product. And they will put their consciousness in that product, and they will manufacture it in a way that it doesn't get sick and it doesn't die. In other words, it lives forever. That's what they want to accomplish. Something that they can use to live forever. They do not want to die. There are many scriptures that tell us some things, but I want to take a look at the book of Enoch and read to you a passage just to give you an idea. This book of Enoch wrote for his son Methuselah and all the others that follow, including you and I. Let's listen. Another book which Enoch wrote for his son Methuselah and for those who will come after him and keep the law in the last days. You who have done good shall wait for those days till an end is made of those who work evil, and an end of the might of the transgressors. And wait ye indeed till sin has passed away, for their names shall be blotted out of the book of life and out of the holy books and their seed shall be destroyed forever. And their spirits shall be slain, and they shall cry and make lamentation in a place that is a chaotic wilderness, and in the fire they shall burn. For there is no earth there, and I saw there something like an invisible cloud. For by reason of its depth I could not look over. And I saw a flame of fire blazing brightly, and the things like shining mountains circling and sweeping to and fro. And I asked one of the holy angels who was with me and said unto him, What is this shining thing? For it is not a heaven, but only the flame of a blazing fire, and the voice of weeping and crying and lamentation and strong pain. And he said unto me, This place which thou seest, here are cast the spirits of sinners and blasphemers, and of those who work wickedness, and of those who pervert everything that the Lord has spoken through the mouth of the prophet, even the things that shall be. My goodness. These people, as you hear what they're doing, as you listen to the words coming out of their mouth, it's not going to go unpunished. Vengeance, God says, is His. We just have to be aware of the agenda that they have, so we can be guarded against making missteps, so that we fall into their traps.
When brains and computers can interact directly, for example, to take just one example, that's it. That's the end of history. That's the end of biology as we know it. Nobody has a clue what will happen once you solve this. If life can basically break out of the organic realm into the vastness of the inorganic realm, and you cannot even begin to imagine what the consequences will be, because our imagination at present is organic.
This man perhaps is one step backwards, but the idea is correct. That's where they're heading. They want to have a direct brain interface with AI, with computers. And they want to end biology. In other words, there'll be no organic matter. They want to make everything inorganic. Things that cannot die, like computers, like machines. That's what they want humans to do. And he says the next revolution will not be machinery, that industrial machinery. It will be the next revolution will be that of human robots, and every human will become one.
In terms of ideas, in terms of religions, the most interesting place today in the world, in religious terms, is Silicon Valley. It's not the Middle East. This is where the new religions are being created now by people like Ray Kurzweil, and these are the religions that will take over the world.
And something that's even more frustrating to hear, but falls in line with the prophecy of the book of Revelation, and even Jesus' words. And this is what it is. This man says that a new religion will become prevalent in the world. It will take over the world, and there will be an AI God, an artificial intelligent God. Wow. And that God will be worshipped. I mean, he's echoing the prophecy. He's telling us that this, I told you that AI is not going to be some beast coming out of the sea or some demon that's coming up. No, this Antichrist is already ready. It will be revealed in a short while. But this computer that is being fed data at the moment, this human form computer AI is going to be worshipped as a god and will manipulate the world, and people in this world will worship that AI as God, because that AI will bring solutions to people's problems, whoever is left alive. There's an article that tells us this, maybe you didn't hear about it. This new religion from a Silicon Valley pioneer worships AI as an emerging godhead. A noted Silicon Valley engineer and robotics researcher creates a church worshipping artificial intelligence. The coming age of near complete automation is bringing with it a great amount of fear in the face of tremendous job losses. And if Elon Musk is to be believed, an AI-led elimination of humanity altogether. Anthony Lewandowski, a former Google engineer, known for his pioneering work on the self-driving car at Waymo, an Alphabet subsidiary. You do know that Google is part of Alphabet, and Alphabet is run by this cabal. Has filed paperwork to register an artificial intelligence-based non-profit religious corporation called the Way of the Future. That is the name of their religion. What will this new church believe in? Its mission, according to paperwork found by Wired Backchannel, is to develop and promote the realization of a Godhead based on artificial intelligence, and through understanding and worship of the Godhead, contribute to the betterment of society. The article continues, from a comparative religion perspective, I think it feels the most like Hinduism, in which there are avatars of deities found on earth, explained Khan. In this way, I think AI can reflect the best of humans back to us, which are in turn worshipped. Here is the Antichrist in the making. This AI church and religious movement is mentioned by Yuval Harari in the video clip I played for you. Going back to the book of Enoch, for some of them are written and inscribed above in the heaven, in order that angels may read them and know that which shall befall the sinners, and the spirits of the humble, and of those who have afflicted their bodies, and have been recompensed by God, and of those who have been put to shame by wicked men, who loved God and loved neither gold nor silver, nor any of the good things which are in the world, but gave over their bodies to torture, who since they came into being, longed not after earthly food, but regarded everything as a passing breath, and lived accordingly. And the Lord tried them much, and their spirits were found pure, so that they should bless his name. And all the blessings destined for them I have recounted in the books. And he had assigned them their recompense, because they have been found to be such as loved heaven more than life it's in this world. And though they were trodden underfoot of wicked men, and experienced abuse and reviling of them, and were put to shame, yet they blessed me. And I will summon the spirits of the good, who belong to the generation of light, and I will transform those who were born in darkness, who in the flesh were not recompensed with such honor as their faithfulness deserved. And I will bring forth in shining light those who have loved my holy name. And I will seat each one on the throne of his honor, and they shall resplendent for times without number. Beloved, let me take that a portion at a time. He prophesies, Enoch, that we in these last days, our bodies will be afflicted. I think that's no secret that this is what they are doing to us, afflicting our bodies. He is speaking about how our bodies is being subjected to torture by whatever they released in the world. Not only that, the products that they're giving us is modified. The genes of these things are modified. These foods that we are eating are modified. They're giving us plastic and synthetic things in our chips, rice, maize meal. Whatever we're eating, they're even making synthetic meat, chickens. And I told you previously, way before this war even started, way before this whole thing began, that they're going to make an excuse to kill off the animals, that the animals are sick, because they want to replace it with modified stuff that they want us to eat. And sometimes without even knowing, we consume these things and they attack our bodies. This is the torture Enoch saw way in advance. Then he says, no, we didn't long for earthly food, because we realize that we are just passing on here. We just a breath and it will be taken away at any time. He goes on to commit further that we will be abused. We will suffer abuse by wicked men. And then in the end, he says, listen, I'm going to recompensate these people. I'm going to give them everything that they lost. I'm going to replenish them. And then he says they're going to be resplendent. That word means that their spirits will be colorful and beautiful, and it will be so majestic that they'll have their own thrones. I'll be blessing them because they didn't want the things of this world. They weren't chasing this. All they wanted to do is love me. And this is the reward of seeing yourself through in these difficult times. The breaking of this third seal with this food is very significant to the devil. And it's very significant, the group of people that he is using to bring this out into the world. One of the ancient documents that we found in the caves of Qumran was the Book of Jubilee. This Book of Jubilees, sometimes called Lesser Genesis, Leptogenesis, is an ancient Jewish religious work of 50 chapters, just like Genesis, considered canonical by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church as well as the Beta Israel Ethiopian Jews, where it is known as the Book of Division. Book of Division means that what all the events were divided into certain timelines. Jubilees is considered one of the pseudegrapha by Roman Catholic, wow, what a surprise, Eastern Orthodox and Protestant churches. It is also not considered canonical within Judaism outside of Beta Israel. That's great. So the people who promote all this evil are the ones that didn't want to authenticate this book, Book of Jubilees. It's almost, in fact, it's a detailed copy of the book of Genesis. And this book was used in Qumran by the Essenes. You remember I told you how dedicated the Essenes were to God? When they saw the filth happening in Jerusalem, they removed themselves and stayed far away from that community, because they knew these Ashkenazi Jews, that time they were Edomites, that pretended to be Jews, were living there and controlling the council. They couldn't handle it. They moved themselves away to Qumran so that they can separate from this evil people. And these are the people who used the Book of Jubilees. What actually it is, when Moses went up to the mountain to pray, Mount Sinai, he stayed there for 40 days and 40 nights. And God was actually giving him the Book of Jubilees. God spoke to an angel on that mountain, and he said to the angel, give Moses a record of the history of humanity. From the time of creation, when I created the heavens and the earth, when I created the sun, the animals and the stars, when I created Adam and Eve and the sin and all the things that have taken place, including Noah, including the Nephilim, all these, when the fallen angels came down and they slept with women and they formed transhuman beings that we know as Nephilim. All those things, I want you to write it down or give it to Moses. And then he said to Moses, I want you to remember what I've been telling you. And I want you to record this And I want you to give it and make it available to all generations that come after you, so they know the history of humanity. And that's why some attribute the writing of Genesis to Moses, but actually Moses was the author of the book of Jubilees, because God gave him specific details and God gave him timelines. A jubilee, for example, is 49 years. Now, for argument's sake, we say 50, because every 50th year they celebrate a jubilee. So 49 years is one jubilee. And so after every jubilee, that's how God divided the time. He said, in the first month of this jubilee, of the second jubilee, of the third jubilee. So which means that when you say second jubilee, it means 49 plus 49, say 100 years. After 100 years, certain things happen. So we're going to go through some of those details so that you get an idea. It's very interesting. Chapter 1. And Moses went onto the mount 40 days and 40 nights, and God taught him the earlier and later history of the division of all the days in the law and of the testimony. Chapter 4. And in the third week, in the second jubilee, that means after 100 years, in the third week when it began, Eve gave birth to Cain. So Adam and Eve were in the garden for 100 years before she gave birth to Cain. And in the fourth, she gave birth to Abel. And in the fifth, she gave birth to her daughter, Awan. We didn't hear of Awan in the book of Genesis, but we're hearing about the daughter of Adam and Eve. But we'll get to her in a moment. And in the first year of the third jubilee, that means 151 years, Cain slew Abel, because God accepted the sacrifice of Abel and did not accept the offering of Cain. You remember that story in the book of Genesis. And he slew him in the field. I'm not reading consequentially, I'm skipping parts so that I can bring relevance to you. And Cain took Awan his sister to be his wife. And she bare him Enoch at the close of the fourth jubilee. So the end of 200 years after Adam and Eve were created, Cain took Awan his sister to be his wife. So Cain would have been 100 years old. And in the first year of the first week of the fifth jubilee, that's 250 years later, houses were built on earth, and Cain built a city and called its name after the name of his son Enoch. So Cain also had a son whose name was Enoch. And as you know, he was the first stonemason. Wow. First stonemason. Interesting for you to put that into perspective. In fact, when he died, the same year that Adam died, he died in that same year after his father died. His house fell on top of him, and that's how he died. I want you to look at the family tree of Adam and Eve. They had, and I'm just going to concentrate on the sons. We see Cain, we see Abel, we know he didn't marry, he didn't have any children. And we see Seth. Seth came some time later. We also know that same scripture tells us, and Adam knew Eve his wife, and she bare yet 9 sons. So 9 sons were born to them all in all. And a few daughters. We don't know the exact number. So that's why I'm specifically telling you we're just going to take this family line. Cain and Seth. And we see Cain had a son Enoch. Seth also had a son Enosh. Then the next child was Irad. But Enosh had Kenan, Mahalalel, and then Mahalalel, Methuselah, and then Jared. Then another Enoch. Then Methuselah. Then Lamech. Then Noah. Now, as you can see down that line of Adam, of Cain, they came to a time when he also had a son, Lamech. Lamech is mentioned in the Bible also. That Lamech, that specific Lamech. And he had 2 wives. But from his wife Zillah, he had a man called Tubal-Cain. Genesis 4 tells us, Zillah had a son Tubal-Cain who forged all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. Tubal-Cain's sister was Naamah. Now, just so that you know, the watchers came down to earth. You know, for those of you that don't know, the watchers are the angels God put in charge of the earth to watch over human beings. These are the same that rebelled against God and came down and married women, human beings, and they bore children with those humans. And that's what we know as the Nephilim. But this happened during the time of Jared, Mahalalel's son, just before Enoch. That's why when Enoch's grandson Lamech gave birth, or his wife gave birth to Noah, Noah looked like an angel. He had white hair, piercing eyes. He looked like an angel, and his father Lamech got worried. He says, "Hey, what?" He asked Naamah, his wife, "Did you sleep with these watchers? Because this looks like an angel. This can't be my son." Eventually, he got confirmation that was his son from the prophets. But they came down during the time of Jared. Now, as you can see, and I've mentioned to you, Cain's great-great-great-granddaughter Naamah became Noah's wife. Now, what's interesting about this is, now I'm going to share with you some details about the meaningfulness of this. But we're going to read further just so that you get a little knowledge about stuff that you may not be aware of. And in the 2nd week of the 10th Jubilee, Mahalalel took up unto him his wife Dinah, the daughter of Barakil, the daughter of his father's brother, and she bare him a son in the 3rd week in the 6th year, and he called his name Jared. For in his days the angels of the Lord descended on the earth, those who are named watchers, that they should instruct the children of men, and that they should do judgment and uprightness on earth. And in the 11th Jubilee, that means 500. Let's go back for a moment. In the 2nd week of the 10th Jubilee, 10th Jubilee is 500 years after creation. After God created Adam and Eve, 500 years went by before the watchers came down. And in the 11th Jubilee, that means 550 years later, Jared took to himself a wife, and her name was Barakah, the daughter of Razujal, a daughter of his father's brother, in the 4th week of this Jubilee. And she bare him a son in the 5th week. In the 4th year of the Jubilee, he had called his son Enoch. And he was the first among men that are born on the earth who learnt writing and knowledge and wisdom, and who wrote down the signs of heavens according to the order of the months in a book, that men might know the seasons of the year according to the order of their separate months. So the person that was responsible for giving us the seasons and the calendar that we know today and follow, not the Gregorian one, the original one that came, separating seasons in months of 30 and so forth. These instructions came from Enoch. And, you know, it's so powerful that we're getting the history of where we all originated from and the timeline that it follows. This is the man that invented writing, Enoch. Jubilee chapter 3. And after Adam had completed 40 days in the land where he had been created, we brought him into the Garden of Eden to till, underline that word when you read it, till and keep it. But his wife they brought in on the 8th day. And after this she entered into the Garden of Eden. So just interestingly enough, there's another land next to Eden. I forget the name now. But that's where Adam and Eve were created. But then God moved them from there into the Garden of Eden, and he told them to till the soil there. And in the 1st week of the 1st Jubilee, that means 1st week of creation, Adam and his wife were in the garden for 7 years tilling and keeping it. There's another word again, tilling and keeping. He was the keeper of the soil. He was a husbandman. And we gave him work, and we instructed him to do everything that is suitable for tillage. There again we see agriculture, husbandry. And he tilled the garden, husbandry, and was naked and knew it not, and was not ashamed. And he protected the garden from the birds and the beasts and the cattle, and gathered its fruit and ate and eat, and put aside the residue for himself and for his wife. There's the provider, husbandry. And after the completion of 7 years, which he had completed there, 7 years exactly, and in the second month of the 17th day of that month, the serpent came and approached the woman. And the serpent said to the woman, hath God commanded you, saying, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? There comes, after 7 years, they were in that garden. When they were created, 40 days later, God moved them into the garden. And when they were there 7 years, tilling and working and living very nicely, everything provided for them, the devil showed up. And he spoke words into Eve. He yadad her. He infiltrated her mind. And whatever he spoke took position in her genes. So much so that it activated her. And she took action through his words. And so he became part of her. You see, this is what happens with genealogy. You see, if you are with someone and you listen to that person's advice, their character comes into you, gets embedded in you. Not the whole character, but part of them. You have at least a piece of their mind. You do as they think. And so you have transitioned yourself with the people you associate with. That's why when people associate with friends, they are just like their friends. You cannot say that they are different. They do this. So the people you listen to, the people who instruct you, the people who guide you, in who you readily embrace advice from, these are the people who are living, piece of them are living in you. You represent them. That's why the world is so carnal at the moment. Because the mainstream media are already embracing the satanic agenda. And when people put their faith in these people, a piece of those, that evil, inhabits the populations. And once it inhabits them, their nature is to follow, is to listen, is to become carnal, just like who they have been listening to. That's why it's such a dangerous platform. And that's why these Ashkenazi Jews continuously want to use the media for propaganda. So after the devil came and spoke to Eve, and she listened, this is what God did. And on that day was closed the mouth of all beasts, and of cattle, and of birds, and whatever walks, and whatever moves, so that they could no longer speak, for they had all spoken one with another with one lip and with one tongue. According to this, God told Moses on that mountain that animals were speaking in one language to each other. And ever since that day, God shut their mouths so that they couldn't speak. Let's go to Genesis 4. But Genesis 4 is concerning the man that took after his mother and father, husbandry. The man that was responsible for tilling the soil like his dad. You see, Abel was a shepherd. He was taking care of sheep. This man was tilling the soil. And God was getting ready to give him punishment. Genesis 4 tells us, when thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. And Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. And he built a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. This gene, this trait of anger that he was rejected by God, lived in him and continued to live in his children. This is how God's genetics work. You know, whenever you have a trait, and I shared this with you so many times, it gets passed on, even hidden anger. That's why sometimes certain people, for no reason, have an angry attitude. It's because it's implanted in them by somebody. You know, you might even have Eve's nose. It might have skipped generations, one, then the next one, then the next one. You might have her eyes. You'll never know which quality of Adam you might have. Some of the farmers that have a gift in tilling, they might have the character of Adam in them, for that's the skill God blessed him with. And so, just so you know, this anger. But then somebody might ask, what happened? The flood took everything away and only Noah was left. But listen to me. This sin that Eve did, it lived in her genes. And when she had a child, that gene was not recessive inside of Cain. It made Cain into an evil man because they yada the character of Satan. And that's why he did what he did and killed his brother. But let's not forget that Abel also would have inherited that same gene, but just that it was recessive. It didn't show itself. So it was hidden in his, but he had the potential. That's why from the time Eve and Adam partook of that tree, God told them that inside of you, you will have good and evil. And sometimes when the evil is more prominent, dominant, then that person will be evil and will do evil things. But the same character is also in all the children of the world. Because even though they are not evil in nature, but the potential of evil is inside of them. So there can be, and certain times it comes out. They can be good. Suddenly, something happens and for one moment they are evil. That's because the tendency is living in their genes. That's why the knowledge, in other words, knowing, embracing, yadaing good and evil lives inside of them. That's the other connotation of knowing good and evil. Even people you know, they might be generally good people. Because the evil that is buried in their gene is hidden. There's no trace of it. It's recessive. For example, they don't have their mother's nose, but the potential for that nose is there inside. It just didn't show up. Maybe it will show up in the grandson. But that's how genes work. And so, when you contemplate, you see that Noah, as righteous as he was, would have had some part, even though he was good, but he had the potential. The same thing would when Esau and his brother Jacob, Esau inherited an aggressive, a dominant, evil gene. But he also had a brother who inherited the good gene. But the evil was in there. So much so that when he was born, he was actually from the womb, he was pulling his brother out, although his brother was supposed to be the firstborn. And he came out first. He also conned his brother into drinking the stew in exchange for that birthright. He also made his mother con the father to bless him as the firstborn by tricking, because the father was gone blind. Isaac was getting blind. He couldn't see who he was blessing. He wanted to bless the big son, but Jacob went and stole it. So as you can see, we learned the good things about Jacob, but the potential for evil was always there. Always is there. That's how, even in the mother's womb, the two were fighting. Good and evil were battling amongst itself. The one that was dominantly evil was fighting with the one that was dominantly good. And that, God says, when she went to find out, what am I going through? God says, you got two nations in your womb. They are going to be at each other's throats for the rest of humanity. That's why, sometimes you might take this lightly with a pinch of salt, but when a pregnant woman is pregnant, and sometimes she have these funny cravings, things that she probably never wanted to have before. Pomegranates, or maybe I want guavas, or maybe I want pineapples or something, mangoes, and you find that it's not her craving. There's something inside that little one there that has come from somewhere down the line, that it's asking for things. It's prompting a reaction. It's a gene that's talking, that's giving signals to the brain of the mother. That's what, and you find when the child grows up, that's the thing that they like. That's because it's embedded in them. So these are interesting things for you to understand about genetics and how it works. Now, as you can see, Noah also, besides the fact that he would have had a recessive evil gene, he married Cain's great-great-great-granddaughter, Naamah. And she would have inherited more of her father's characteristics, because her mother and father were related. And so she had a dominant evil gene perhaps, but that's why, even though God removed every one evil on the earth, evil continued to flourish even after Noah. And this desire to suppress, it went on to Esau. So beloved, sin could never be removed from the earth. And just so you know, even up until Jesus came, sin was still prevalent inside of the disciples. They rejected him, they disowned him. The only time that they changed was when Jesus died and paid for those sins. He washed the bloodline clean. Whatever evil was supposed to be there, it has been removed. And that's the only time you can be born again and have a free life. Otherwise, the curse of your ancestor will always dominate your life. And I told you this last week, that sometimes when you have problems, you look upon your family line and realize that that curse of not owning something, of having multiple divorces, of having no money, of having unemployment, of becoming an alcoholic, that is a family trait. And it's time that you let Jesus into your life, seriously, not pretend, not with half and heart, with seriousness, ask him to cleanse and wash you. Because the same tilling of the soil, you see, these people that want to create famine, they have no idea why they harbor such a hatred against humanity. Because God gave everybody a chance, except that he rejected their great-grandfather. That's even before Esau. This is Cain we're talking about. The last thing I want to mention to you, in case you didn't know, the World Economic Forum is having a meeting now, very secretive meeting, on the 22nd to the 24th of May. And they're going to be discussing how to bring back confidence of the people in the governments and the institutions. They want to tackle that. They want to restore trust. Attending there will be presidents, prime ministers, CEOs, head of central banks, energy, economic, technology ministers, and all set to attend that secret meeting. Multinational corporations and banks are also partnered with Davos Summit, including Goldman Sachs, Google, Amazon, MasterCard, IBM, BlackRock, and Microsoft, like we didn't know. George Soros is also featured there. Just a few of the people that will be there, I'd like to read to you, and perhaps we'll show you that. Xi Jinping, China, Olaf Scholz, Narendra Modi, these are all sellouts. Scott Morrison, Naftali Bennett, the Prime Minister of Israel, Antonio Guterres, been roaming around the fake Ukraine war, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the non-qualified dictator of health in the world, Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, Christine Lagarde, European Bank President, Nicola Schmidt, Commissioner of Jobs and Social Rights, European Commission, Anthony Fauci, wow, John F. Kerry, he was special Vice President of the United States, I think, Janet Yellen, Al Gore, this Minister of Energy in Saudi Arabia, Abdul Aziz. The Egyptians are represented. But something that caught my attention more than anything else, you know what they're having there? They're having shamans that's going to be giving talks there. Psychedelic shamans. They're going to Davos. They've been invited. These people have companies, they do a show in America called the Burning Man. That Burning Man, they burn a human being. They celebrate Hawiska, magic mushrooms. They go into a psychedelic trance, eating those drugs, and the whole idea that BlackRock we taught you, they go into a trance so that they can see the spirit world. They can access what we know as demons or spirits, unclean things that give them instructions. They believe that's where they get their blessing from, their superior knowledge to do certain things in technology and so forth. This is the reason why they do it, that Burning Man in America. But the people that are involved there are being invited now to Davos to give talks, and they want to start making this available to the public. They will be featured there. Other participants include the Chopra Foundation, Deepak Chopra, and Mount Sinai Medicine, the School of Medicine representatives. The things that they want to introduce that they've been using clinical trials in the meantime is MDMA, LSD, Hawiska, psilocybin, and DMT. These are the things that we spoke about, how dangerous they are. They're busy with clinical trials in the United States, and they want to make it available to the public. So they're meeting in this Davos, probably using the same technique which they've always been using. However, they're just inviting it now to bring it to the world. They want to probably inquire of their master, what's the next move? What we're going to do? We can tell them the next move is going to be the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. But they need to speed up. Like how he told Judas, do quickly what you need to do. So we need to pray also. Just do quickly what you need to do. And we will stand our ground and we will wait. But the main thing is, Jesus is in control. Never forget that. So we pray for you and we ask God's favor and blessing upon you. Beloved, before I pray with you, I'd just like to inform you that early last week, Sunday in fact, we got notification that our main YouTube channel is closed for 1 week. It's banned because they found a video that we posted last year. Even we edited it, God knows how they found it, but they blocked us for 1 week, which means that you are watching this sermon first on our second YouTube channel. So if you want to watch it on the first YouTube channel, it will be available on Monday, probably after lunch or so. But if you have your notifications bell set and you are a subscriber, it will come up on your phone or device when it is made available. I want to encourage you that sometimes these sort of things happen. Therefore, I want you to subscribe to both the YouTube channels. I want you to also subscribe to our Rumble channel, so that if we are blocked in any way, we are able to still proceed and give you the Word of God. Can I pray with you, please? Heavenly Father, I pray for every saint that is listening to me. There are people who want to give their lives to Jesus. And Lord, I pray that you would convict them. And as long as they start to make an internal commitment to serve you, you write their names in the Lamb's Book of Life. Make them yours today. Never let them go. Father, that those of us that made mistakes, there are some of us that have traits that are cursed to us. We ask you to break that with the blood of Jesus. As we recommit our lives to you in a pure way, I pray you do that for your children. Cover them all with your blood, and let our paths be as smooth as you want it to be for us, Lord. Bless us together until we meet each other. Cover us, Lord. Keep us sustained in Jesus' name. Everybody said, Amen. God bless you. Have yourself a beautiful week. I pray you join me again next week.